Hey, it's me again. Okay, we're going to keep on trucking. So, we're reading from Scmionism, a basic reader. All right. And we're going to pick up right where I left off. I think this is going to be part 8 of reading this book. Okay, so, and this is being written by Golda Meir. Yeah. Okay. Yet, this grim course was not inevitable. The heart of the Shmionist faith was the conviction that Jewish independence could be achieved in harmony with Arab national aspirations. From its inception, Shmionism is a political movement, as a political movement, which it is. It's not religious. I mean, they try to make it seem like it is, but dude, it's a sticky wicket, as my mom used to say. Okay, let's see. From its inception, Shmionism as a political movement strove to establish an Arab-Jewish understanding. A great number of attempts had been made before the famous Weizmann-Faisal Agreement of January 1919, which welcomed the Jews to Palestine. These were followed by attempts in the 1930s and 1940s. All had one aim in view, to reach an agreement with our Arab neighbors. As late as 1947-48, we tried in vain to avert the course of events. In November 1947, shortly before the partition resolution was adopted at the United Nations, King Abdullah of Jordan promised me that he would never join the Arab states in a war against us, and after the UN resolution was adopted, we would meet to work out ways and means of peace and cooperation between our states. As late as May 10th, 1948, just 5 days before the British were to leave Palestine, I crossed into what was already enemy territory, Jordan, and met the king in Amman. As I drove on the road leading to Amman, I could see the Mafraq camp and the Iraqi troops and guns massing there. At that meeting, King Abdullah did not deny the promise given me in November, but he stated that if we declared ourselves a state and insisted on unlimited Jewish immigration, he would have no choice but to join in a war against us. His alternative was to bring the whole area under his domination and curtail Jewish immigration. That was 25 years ago. Since the achievement of our independence and the conclusion of the armistice agreements of 1949, we have left no stone unturned in an endless effort to find avenues of dialogue which might lead to an agreement. And I think, just due to, we act like today like we know more than anything, and there's so much context and so much truth missing from the historical narrative. I'm sorry, had to move the tripod. Missing from the narrative about these Jays, who they are, where they came from, and why they have been kicked out of 109 countries and kingdoms. Let's be so for real. Okay. Nothing could be more false than the Arab script in which Zionist, quote, aggressors appeared on the scene to dispossess local Palestinians, which you cannot deny that they have done now. I mean, I know I've mentioned before, there were some very well-to-do Palestinians back in the day, and they would come. I remember specifically one story of a family who had come to America for vacation. I think they went to New York, and they got back to Palestine, and some Jays had just moved into their house and had armed guards standing outside and would not let the rightful owners of that home re-enter. That's crazy. But they act like they haven't done anything wrong. And, everybody's just jealous because they're God's chosen. What a load of BS. Anyways. Okay. Appeared on the scene to dispossess local Palestinians. Okay. And it says nothing could be more false. No, I think that people that actually have looked into this know that nothing could be more true. Since this accusation still continues the burden of the Arab case and provides the rationale for Arab enmity, it cannot be ignored even though the answers, like the charges, are familiar. We cannot assume a guilt we do not feel for sufferings of which we were not the cause. Cute. Let me put it together in the simplest terms. When I came to Schmalestein in 1921, my pioneer generation was neither morally obtuse nor uninformed. We knew there were Arabs in Schmalestein, just as we knew from our own experience that our labor in malaria-ridden kibbutzim transformed uninhabitable swamps into habitable soil. Far from ignoring the local population, we were sustained by the sincere conviction that our toil created more and better living space for both Arab and Jay. In this belief, we were proven right. Between 1922 and 1947, the Arab population of Schmalestein grew from 670,000 to 1.2 million, a spectacular increase paralleled in no neighboring Arab territory. Thanks to the agricultural and industrial development of the country, Schmalestein changed from a land of Arab immigration to one of Arab immigration attracted by the higher standards of living and greater opportunities. The supposed Zionist dispossession of Arabs is a myth disproven by every official census. Yeah, anything official is going to be BS. I mean, if we haven't learned that by now, what are we even doing? We are also fully aware of Arab national aspirations in the Middle East. We assume that these aspirations would find ample satisfaction in the various Arab states set up by the Allies and the vast areas freed from Ottoman domination. By the end of the British Mandate, 99% of that area had been allotted to the Arabs, 1% to the Jewish homeland. If there was any inequity in this distribution, surely the Arabs were not its victims. Hence, we hope sincerely, if perhaps naively, that the Jewish and Arab independence would flourish peacefully side by side to the advantage of the entire Middle East. Something else should be made clear. Schmalestinian Arab nationalism was not a visible factor at the time. Until recently, Arab nationalism constantly opposed the designation of one sector of the Middle East as Palestine. It regarded this, quote, particularism, end quote, as a violation of the concept of a unitary Arab state. The territory that Jays cherished as historic Schmalestein, the Arabs viewed merely as southern Syria. As late as 1956, Ahmed Shukeri, at the time Syrian representative to the United Nations, and later head of the Schmalestein Liberation Organization, declared in the Security Council that, quote, it is a common knowledge that Schmalestein is nothing but southern Syria, end quote. At the time of the rebirth of the Jewish state, the argument was between the Jewish people and the Arab people. Though the nationalist demands of the latter had been richly fulfilled, they refused to honor the equivalent legitimacy of Jewish rights. Their position was that Arabs should be sovereign everywhere, the Jews nowhere. Thus, it was Arab intransigence that led to the compromise of the UN partition resolution, by which the area encompassed by the Balfour Declaration was further cut so that Israel arose in 1/5 of the territory originally allotted for a Jewish homeland. And this is in parentheses. The first truncation had taken place in 1922, when 3/4 of the original Schmalestein area was severed for the establishment of Transjordan, in parentheses. Nevertheless, for the sake of independence, peace, and possibility of freely bringing Jewish survivors to Israel's shores, the Jews accepted this compromise and created Israel in a spirit of joy and hope. Instead of the Arabs doing things likewise and establishing their state in the area assigned to them by the UN resolution, 7 Arab states attacked newborn Israel. They refused to accept the existence of a Jewish state and sought to throttle it at birth. Section 3, and this is still Golda Meir's writing. This chronology is essential for an understanding of the present impasse. There can be no greater mistake in assessing the current situation in the Middle East than to assume that the conflict continues because of a specific political Arab grievance, the plight of the Arab refugees, the Israeli presence on the West Bank or in the Sinai, and the reunification of Jerusalem. The record bears out the error of this view. In 1947 through 48, when 7 Arab states launched the invasion, which resulted in the exodus of 600,000 Arabs, mainly to other parts of Schmalestein, to the West Bank, Gaza, and Jordan, there had been no dispossessed Arabs and no Arab refugees. The Arab refugee problem was the result, not the cause, of the 1948 war. Remember, it's opposite day, so I think we can probably assume that the opposite of what Golda here is saying is true. Now, I don't know that, but that's just an assumption, and one that since September 11th of 2001, I have realized that anytime anybody on quote unquote the news tells you something, going ahead and believing the opposite is true is probably the case. And that has never steered me wrong. Never, not one time. Okay. Because these people, these Kabbalists, they like to, do things upside down and backwards because they hate goodness and holiness, and they want to subvert everything. So they flip it around in reverse and then flip it on its head. Anyways, okay. Let's see. In June 1967, Sinai, Gaza, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and East Jerusalem were all in Arab possession. Nevertheless, the Arabs concentrated their troops in Sinai, established a blockade, and announced in Nasser's words on May 27, 1967, that the object of the war was the destruction of Israel. It is therefore absurd to contend that the present territorial configuration is the cause of the Middle East tension. The heart of the problem was what caused the Six-Day War, not the territories administered by Israel after the war. Simply put, the root issue is the Arab attitude to Yasharel's very existence and security. Once the Arab countries accept the legitimacy of Yasharel, as we have always accepted theirs, there is no reason for their intransigence against negotiating the differences between us. In this connection, let me state as firmly as I can that Yasharel's insistence on negotiations, direct or indirect, is not a maneuver devised to bait our Arab enemies. The vehement refusal of the Arab leaders to discuss with us the terms of a peace settlement must raise the question as to whether they are really prepared to live in peace with us. This is the crux of the conflict. And, like, bro, they're lying. They act like, these Arabs just hated them for no reason whatsoever. There is very good reason. And if you're allowed to even look into it, which, the book 1984, I feel like was more of a documentary than like work of fiction, because we're there. He was off by maybe 30, 40 years, but we're there. All the food is fake. War is peace. Evil is good. I mean, literally everything is upside down and backwards in this weird ass matrix that we're living in. Okay. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Yasharel, sometimes accused, quote, of rigidity in her stated positions, and is exhorted to be more flexible. These charges deserve careful examination. Since 1967, we have shifted from our original demand for direct bilateral negotiations, which we consider the most effective and promising method, to a procedure similar to that employed at Rhodes in 1948 through 49, when talks both direct and indirect took place. In 1970, in order to meet Arab intransigence, we agreed to the procedure of indirect negotiation in the first stage, hoping that this would pave the road to a peace agreement. An even more fundamental indication of Yasharel's readiness for compromise may be found in our policy statements. We have said that whereas Yasharel would not return to the tragically vulnerable pre-June 1967 armistice lines, we do not insist that the present ceasefire lines be final. We thus leave open a very broad area for meaningful negotiation and compromise. The Arab states, on the other hand, continue to reiterate their demands for Yasharel's, quote, total withdrawal, end quote, to the June 4th, 1967 lines. By this demand, they distort Security Council Resolution 242, which never called for total withdrawal or withdrawal from all the territories. The language of the resolution is withdrawal, quote, from territories, end quote, acknowledging Yasharel's right to live within, quote, secure and recognized boundaries, end quote. All attempts made to insert the resolution the demand for total withdrawal or withdrawal from the, quote, territories were rejected by the Security Council. We know that the phrase, quote, secure and recognize boundaries, end quote, is not a magic incantation. It is a theme for negotiation. In our insistence on this point, we are motivated by two realistic considerations based on our experience in 1948. We want boundaries whose very character will make aggression less inviting to any would-be invader and which would be defended with fewer casualties if such aggression nevertheless took place. The enormous advantages in size of population and topography, which our adversaries have always enjoyed, have tempted them periodically to make assaults upon us. We want to weaken such temptation to the greatest possible degree. After 3 wars for survival in the last 25 years, we cannot reasonably be expected to disregard our bitter experience. In 1948, 1956, and 1967, we learned how swiftly Egypt could move her tanks and regiments into Sinai from the south, and how readily our southern maritime approach could be blockaded from Sharm el-Sheikh. To the south stretched the Gaza Strip, pointing as an aggressive finger into the heart of our territory. From there, Fedayeen regularly infiltrated and carried out sabotage and unaliving, reaching all the way to the outskirts of Tel Aviv. On the eastern border, Jordanian guns pointing at our dwellings could be seen by our children playing in the streets of Jerusalem. The city could be bombarded from our very doorstep. Israel herself could be readily cut at her 12-mile waist between the old line with Jordan and the sea near Netanya. In the north, from the fortified ridge of the Golan Heights, the Syrians shelled our kibbutzim in the valley at will. To the west lay the Mediterranean, into which the Arabs regularly promised to drive us. Having escaped from such tight encirclement, we feel justified in our determination not to re-enter again a trap composed of vulnerable geography. Even at an age of rockets and missiles, we cannot announce the added security inherent in more rational boundaries, which would keep the potential adversary at a greater distance from our homes. When the new European security system was established after the Second World War, no one in his right mind proposed the precise reconstruction of the map which had spelled vulnerability and disaster for so many nations. The border changes Israel seeks do not involve loss of territory vital to Arab interests. The Sinai Desert has in the past served no Egyptian purpose save to provide a ready staging ground for attacks on Yasharel for the maintenance of blockade. No Egyptians live in Sinai, and only a few Bedouin tribes, in parentheses, not Egyptian citizens, close parentheses, roam its sands. Sharm el-Sheikh, a desolate, uninhabited outpost, was used by the Egyptians only to blockade the Gulf of Aqaba. In any case, Yasharel, under a peace settlement, would not seek to retain all or most of Sinai. As for the Golan Heights, it constituted primarily a military fortress directed at our agricultural settlements in the valley below. The West Bank presents a more complex problem. I have made it clear several times that in negotiations with the Kingdom of Jordan, we will naturally present proposals for a territorial agreement. My general comment holds good. The border changes sought by Yasharel will, by reducing the strategic advantage enjoyed by a would-be aggressor, help to deter the war. Conversely, reconstructing these advantages would facilitate hostile designs against Yasharel and renew the prospects of war. Hold on, I gotta let the dog out. Okay, thanks. I know, it just literally cut. It was like a jump cut or whatever. My pausing and unpausing. Okay, anyways. Let's see, where was I? We were going on about the, let's see. Can you hear the toddler in the background? He's so precious. It's my significant other's baby. The mom just came. They split up, and she just came and dropped him off one day. Very strange, but whatever. He's adorable, and we're happy to have him here. Anyways, okay, so I think that we were at where they were talking about present proposals for a territorial agreement. My general comment holds good. The border changes sought by Israel will, by reducing the strategic advantage enjoyed by a would-be aggressor, help to deter war. Conversely, reconstructing these advantages would facilitate hostile designs against Israel and renew the prospects of war. This is not the first time in our history that Israel has urged to withdraw from Sinai, Sharm el-Sheikh, and Gaza at the close of hostilities in 1956 in response to the massing of Egyptian armor in Sinai, the blockade of the Straits of Tiran, and the terrorist incursions from the Egypt-held Gaza, Israel acted in the Sinai. We repelled the Egyptian army, freed the Gaza Strip occupied by Egypt by 1948, removed Egyptian gun emplacements that for 6 years had blockaded the Gulf of Aqaba, and restored free access for the movement of ships through a waterway which has the character of a lifeline for Yasharel. In response to solemn assurances that the blockade would not be renewed, terrorist infiltration would not be restored, and the Egyptian forces would not re-enter Gaza, Yasharel agreed to withdraw from Sinai, Sharm el-Sheikh, and Gaza. As foreign minister, it was my office in March 1957 to announce to the General Assembly Yasharel's compliance with the UN resolution calling for such withdrawal. Previously, January 1957, I had warned the General Assembly of the consequences of any action that might result, quote, in the restoration of the blockade and the consequent renewal of regional conflict and international tension, end quote. And I asked, in words painfully relevant today, quote, shall Egypt be allowed once more to organize murder, whatever, hopefully they don't flag that, and sabotage in this strip, Gaza? Shall Egypt be allowed to condemn the local population to permanent impoverishment and to block any solution of the refugee problem? End quote. The world knows what happened. Do they? Despite the, quote, assurances and, quote, the hopes and expectations on the strength of which Yasharel withdrew, Egyptian troops, promptly reoccupied Gaza. Learning of this betrayal of our good faith as soon as I got back to Yasharel, I at once returned to the United Nations to voice my indignation to Secretary of State Dulles and UN Secretary General Hammarskjöld. It's got like an umlaut or whatever the two dots are over it. Sounds like a Nordic type of name. I'm not really sure. Anyways, I shall never forget Secretary Hammarskjöld's blunt question. Okay. Quote, it's not worth going to war again, is it? End quote. In 1967, the remaining elements of the 57 arrangements were unilaterally violated by Egypt. The repeated failure of international arrangements to safeguard our country's vital interests has taught us a lesson we do not easily forget. International decisions proved meaningless in each crisis that we faced. In 1948, when the Arab states violated the partition resolution in the long years of lawless blockade and terrorist incursion, and in 1967, when the international community, which had, quote, assured, end quote, our territorial integrity and freedom from blockade, proved powerless to stand by its commitments. Hence, we inevitably reflect on this history when urged to take action which could result in diminishing our capacity for self-defense and make us dependent on international guarantees. History repeats itself in the Middle East. After every war staged by Arab states against us, they demand the restoration of the very borders they set out to destroy. When Egypt insists now upon total withdrawal of Israeli forces to the pre-June 4th, 1967 lines, the simple question arises. If these borders were so sanctified for Egypt after the war, why were they not honored by Egypt before the war, and why launch war to destroy them in the first place? The bitter truth is that the Arab leaders have not changed their attitudes about our very presence in this area. Arab statesmen from Nasser to Sadat have made no secret of their proposed strategy. Mohammed Hassanein Haikal, the influential editor of the Egyptian daily Al-Ahram, formulated a notorious, quote, theory of two stages, end quote, in an article on February 25th, 1971. Now, I haven't looked into this, so I don't know. The other things that I was reading about previously, I have already read one book on, and so I already know that they're totally full of crap in what they were saying about, World War I, how it started, all of that, because the Facts Are Facts book that we wrote. And what we're trying to do is lay a foundation of truth and understanding so that we can, really know what's going on here in the world. So I have absolutely no clue whether this is true or not. But eventually we will get down to the bottom of it. Okay, so this is, like it says, from the influential editor of the Egyptian daily Al Aram. Okay, there are only two specific Arab goals at present: elimination of the consequences of the 1967 aggression through Israel's withdrawal from all the lands it occupied that year, and elimination of the consequences of the 1948 aggression through the eradication of Israel. The second goal is not, in fact, specific but abstract, and some of us make the mistake of starting with the second step instead of the first. On the basis of the conditions I have mentioned, it is possible to believe in the possibility of attaining the first goal. As for the second goal, we should learn from the enemy how to move step by step. And this is from Cairo Radio, February 26, 1971, quoted from the BBC Monitoring Service. Monitoring Service? What? Anyways, we find this strategy will all too concrete and decline to facilitate its implementation. Yasharel is a democracy in which various views, minimalist and maximalist, are freely advocated. We have our doves and hawks. Most Israelis are neither, but we do refuse the role of clay pigeon. More than once, I have made it clear that we are ready for negotiations on the issue of borders and that we have never said that the ceasefire lines have to be the peace boundaries on all sectors. The borders must be indefensible, and for that purpose, significant changes in the previous lines are unnecessary, but we are ready for a territorial compromise. So they said. This is part 4. Jerusalem mourned and Jayish prayer since the fall of the temple was never without a community of pious Jays. Furthermore, Jays constituted a majority of the ancient city from the mid-19th century until 1948, when the Jordanian army seized the eastern half of Jerusalem, including the walled Old City with its religious shrines sacred to Jays, Muslims, and Christians, and drove out the Jayish inhabitants. Didn't Golda Meir have something to do with like Hollywood? I'm going to have to look into that. Anyways, according to the hold on, let me close this door. Okay, I'm sorry. The significant other just got home and he saw me reading and he's like, oh. So I paused it for a second and just was like, you're come on in. What's up? And then, but when he left the door like gaping open. I'm like, there's a squeaking toddler upstairs. I'm trying to read here. So I had to go close the door. Anyways, okay. Let's see. Okay. So I think that I just got done. No, maybe not. Okay. According to the 1949 armistice, yeah, I had just turned the page. And I was wondering out loud about Golda Meir and the involvement I think that he had with like Hollywood and the establishing of Hollywood. We gotta like realize that Hollywood is a propaganda machine. Okay. And through entertainment, we have all been indoctrinated to a certain degree, whether we realize it or not. And I cannot remember who it was. It was somebody in the CIA, but he said basically, we'll know that our agenda or our mission is complete when everything that the American populace believes is false. And I would say that we're basically essentially there. Okay. So, according to the 1949 armistice agreements signed by Jordan and Israel, free access to the Jewish holy places, to the Mount of Olives, and to the university and hospital on Mount Scopus was agreed to. But instead of honoring this commitment, Jordan divided the city with walls, barbed wire, and gun emplacements. For the first time since Roman conquest, Jays were prevented from praying at their holiest shrine, the Western Wall. During the 19 years of Jordanian occupation, Jays were barred from their religious sites in total violation of the armistice agreements. Yasharel's repeated appeals to the Security Council brought no redress. In June 1967, Jordan again began shelling Jerusalem, despite Israel's message to King Hussein, sent through General Oddbul, the UN representative, that Israel would not attack if Jordan kept out of the conflict. Hussein joined the Egyptian assault, with the result that Jordan lost her hold on eastern Jerusalem. Yasharel reunited the artificially rent city. Our joy in the liberation of Jerusalem was marred by the sight of the sacred ancient Jayish quarter and the venerable synagogues destroyed by Jordan. The Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives had been desecrated, and thousands of its tombstones used as paving stones for Jordanian roads. Since 1967, Jays, Christians, and Muslims have moved freely in and out of all its sectors. Perhaps this record will explain why we view fears that are sometimes expressed for the sanctity of Jerusalem under Israeli rule as disingenuous. In 1948 and in 1967, the Arabs shelled Jerusalem with no regard for the safety of churches and holy places without rousing the vocal apprehension of the world. Let me just stop right there and say that you Israelis bombed the crap out of a church with absolutely no care in the world literally like a month ago. So what are y'all even talking about? This pretending that they actually give a crap and they don't actually believe that they are supremacist and that they are going to rule us all. This fake humility, this fake sense of fairness. It's all BS, bro. It's all BS. Anyways. Okay, same. No regard for the safety of churches and holy places without... Okay. In 1967, Israeli soldiers to spare Jerusalem risked their lives in hand-to-hand fighting, street by narrow street, rather than resort to heavy armor. Jordanian troops, on the other hand, used church roofs and even the minarets of their own mosque for gun emplacements. Journalists covering the Six-Day War commented on the reverence with which Israeli soldiers approached Jerusalem. Well, times have changed, honey, because they have no reverence for any freaking thing. Since that time, satisfaction has been expressed by Christian dignitaries at the care which Israel has bestowed on the holy places of Christendom. We have also shown strict regard for Muslim sanctuaries, though while rebuilding our ruined synagogues and devastated Jewish quarter, we have had cause to regret that the Arabs failed to display an equivalent respect for what we hold dear. Yasharel has publicly announced her policy that Christian and Muslim holy places be administered by the respective heads of these religions. To this end, Israel wishes to enter into special agreements with the heads of the various denominations for the detailed implementation of this policy. Jerusalem shall remain united and the capital of Yasharel. Its Arab inhabitants will, of course, continue to enjoy full freedom and equality. I don't find it necessary to refute Arab propaganda about Israel's alleged ill treatment of the local population of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Such charges are readily disproven by the daily life of the areas, the success of the, quote, open bridges policy, and the testimony of impartial observers. The manifest material advantages of the Arab inhabitants of the West Bank and Gaza are undisputed. I know that a marked rise in the standard of living, free opportunities for work at the Israeli wage rate, which is twice as high as Jordan's, and the introduction of modern health and technological services are welcome benefits. They do not in themselves solve sensitive political and national issues. Let me therefore return to the overriding question of peace. In his recent article in Foreign Affairs, Anwar Sadat, quote, Where Egypt Stands, and from the October 1972 edition, let's see, where was I? President Sadat, among other accusations, several times charged that Israel seeks to, quote, dominate the Middle East. Well, he's not wrong. And not only do they seek to, quote, dominate the Middle East, they seek to, quote, dominate the entire world. And all you have to do is listen to these rabbis. Like, literally, go to Rumble and watch Adam Green's No More News. KNOWMORENEWS. Like, whether you're Christian, it doesn't matter. Okay, people that are telling the truth, that's all that matters. Okay, the truth, right? So, because anything that's based on a lie cannot stand. And all you have to do is listen to these rabbis speak, and you will know what their true intentions are. And I keep telling you, as soon as I get some better equipment, whatever, this whole thing that I'm doing right now is just kind of something to keep me going, something really for just to like start up this channel. But once I get better production quality, we are going to be making some really good videos here. Okay. Hold on. Now the dog is scratching at the door. All right. My apologies. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Okay, right. That Israel seeks to dominate the Middle East. It's hard for me to believe that an Arab statesman seriously believes this evil fantasy. And spells it PH. Fantasy. That's crazy. I mean, like, it's literally becoming more and more obvious by the day what Israel's plans are. I mean, and it's like they talk out of both sides of their mouths. Okay. But Voltaire's epigram, as long as men believe absurdities, they will commit atrocities. Yeah. And most of the absurdities that people today are believing are that A, the inhabitants of Yasharel are, quote, God's chosen people, okay? And that, you know, we've got to go back under the law and start observing Torah, or like, you know, we're not going to be saved by Jesus. It's like, shut up. I mean, this is all crazy. This is the irony. The irony. Okay, so Voltaire's epigram, as long as men believe absurdities, they will commit atrocities, reminds us of the bloody persecutions and wars that have stained the course of human history because men believed absurdities about others. And right now people are believing absurdities about these Jays, but they're believing it in a positive light. And they need to wake up, because they weren't kicked out of 109 countries and kingdoms for nothing, okay? And it's not because of jealousy. Nobody's jealous of them. Okay. The carnage of the schmaltzy epic is only the most terrifying example of the depth to which people sink through the acceptance of imbecilic myths. For this reason, I stress the obvious. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that, like, that has been utterly debunked, okay? And really the more terrible atrocities are that the 60 million or whatever Christians it was that were killed during the Bolshevik Revolution, okay? But, you know, nobody gives a crap about that. If it's Christians dying, which Christians are still dying all over the world, nobody effing cares. But, you know, if one J stubs their toe, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Discrimination, anti-Semitism. Like, shut up. Okay. We are a small people of some 3 million among 100 million Arabs, as our adversaries never tire of reminding us. A glance at the map shows Yasharel as a mere pinpoint amid huge Arab territories. To suggest that Yasharel, no matter how able or energetic, seeks to, quote, dominate this vast expanse is of the stuff of the, quote, elders of Zion forgery. Is it a forgery? According to which the tiny persecuted Jewish minority conspired to rule the world. It's not a conspiracy anymore. You've said it out of your own mouths. And the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a very interesting document indeed, that if you can get your hands on it, I would suggest that anybody that can do. Let me review our record in the Middle East. Through the Balfour Declaration, promised a Jewish homeland in the area of historic Palestine. And it was promised to them by Britain when it was not theirs to give in the first place. An area extending from the Mediterranean to the borders of the present-day Iraq. We accepted the severance of 3/4 of that territory for the establishment of the Hashemite kingdom east of the Jordan. We later accepted the further shrinkage of the original pledge through the UN partition resolution. Still later, in the tense last week of May 1967, when the Arab onslaught was imminent, Prime Minister Eshkol turned to the Arab states with a final plea for peace. Quote, I would like to say again to the Arab countries, particularly Egypt and Syria, that we harbor no aggressive designs. We have no possible interest in violating either their security, their territory, or their legitimate rights, end quote. The Arabs responded by proclaiming that the hour of Israel's annihilation had struck. We did not seek to, quote, expand, but neither did we dismiss Arab threats of Holocaust as, quote, rhetoric. We are too aware of the disparity of forces and resources available to Arab states for us to discount promises the Arabs twice before have tried to fulfill. Having been driven to defend ourselves, we secured the bridgeheads from which our enemies sought to destroy us. But successful self-defense is hardly evidence of a desire for, quote, domination. Survival is not aggression. No, but, they have to tell you, okay? They have to tell us what they're doing. And so these protocols of the elders of Zion, though Golda Meir calls it a work of fiction, does it seem, especially now in hindsight, does it seem like a work of fiction? No, it does not. And maybe I will do that. I need to write that down. I need to actually write that down. The protocols of the elders of Zion. I need to write that down, and we will go over that too, because it's absolutely wild. Okay. Where was I? Okay. In this article, President Sadat dwells on the impropriety of keeping the, quote, fruits of victory, end quote. I do not care to speculate on what would have been the fate of Yasharel had the Arabs enjoyed those fruits, nor am I aware of any modern country that waged a successful war of self-defense whose peace treaty had failed to correct the vulnerable and dangerous positions which had made it an inviting target for aggression. The adjustment of the border between Poland and East Germany provides a contemporary instance of significant border changes involving large areas of populated territory with the aim of offering increased security. Yasharel is convinced that Poland was justified in insisting upon this territorial adjustment, and Chancellor Brandt is evident that this is the sentiment of world opinion generally. Anyone familiar with our region cannot reasonably suggest that our right to insist upon border changes is less than that of Poland. But see, when they own all of the media, literally in almost every country, it's quite easy for them to indoctrinate the whole entire world. So who even knows what's true anymore at this point? Like, it's out of control, the lies. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here and upload this. And then I'm probably going to get something to eat and let this dog out, because she is sitting here staring at me. Snuggly, Ponky, you're a good girl. You're my friend. You're my snuggly friend. And then we're going to try to get this done ASAP, because I really feel like reading the 13th tribe will shed a lot of light on these quote unquote Jays and who they actually truly are. Okay, because they're not from ancient Hebrews. They don't even practice Torah, maybe except for like the Sephardics or something. They practice Talmud, okay? And people are like, well, where did the word Jew come from? It comes from the practice of Judaism, which has nothing to do with being a Judean. Jesus was not a J, he was a Judean. Words mean things. We've got to get back to that. I mean, go get yourself like an old dictionary. Look at this. This thing weighs probably 10 pounds. Look how thick that is. I mean, this is my hand. Look how, I'm holding it up to my head. Look how wide it is. This is the Random House Dictionary of the English Language. And, dude, it talks about Indo-European languages. Wow. I mean, this is actually very, very interesting. And I'm trying to see anywhere is Hebrew in any of this. Indic, Old Latin, West Slavic, South Slavic, East Slavic, Baltic, Old Irish, Cornish, Welsh. I mean, this is freaking interesting as hell. So anyways, okay, High German, and under that you go down, and under its sub thing is Yiddish. Anyways, Aaron Mack, BS detector, peacing out. I might come back later and read one more section, but then again, that might be it for me for today. Anyways, I hope everyone is doing well. I love all you guys, and let's not continue falling for the BS.